Without providing any proof, Elon said USAID is a criminal organization.
It seems like certain U.S. officials are living up to the name of being some of the most corrupt people on the face of the earth. Because only recently, the FBI found some rather damning evidence of corruption and mismanagement of funds against none other than USAID officials.
We must, as a people, appeal to the consciousness of those moderate Republicans.
The same officials who are meant to promote democratic reforms, the same officials who are meant to be as transparent as humanly possible.
USAID workers are just some of the most low-key folks that, the low-key but low-key brave.
But it seems like corruption wasn't the only thing FBI agents uncovered. There was also proof of more serious crimes. Now, all of this begs the question, what other crimes has USAID committed?
One of the first victims Elon Musk has decided to sacrifice to the ever-ravenous gods of chaos.
Who are those involved in these crimes, and how long has it been going on? Join us today as we get into all the details.
Today, President Donald Trump calling USAID fraud, making that comment while meeting with the Prime Minister.
What did the FBI find? Can we all remember when Elon Musk revealed something shocking about the USAID? Well, if you cannot remember, let us help you jog your memory. Elon Musk basically called USAID a criminal organization and a radical left political psyop. When Elon made that statement, we all thought, whew, that's that, and this drama will probably be over with soon enough. Well, we couldn't have been more wrong because it seems like the USAID is under the spotlight and is at the center of yet another drama, as earlier this week, the FBI uncovered some shocking evidence that could put some of the top guys away for a really long time. And when we say a really long time, we are looking at a minimum of 20 years. Don't go anywhere because we are about to get into all the details. But before we jump the gun here, we need to get some facts straight. Over the years, it seems as though USAID has been at the center of many controversies, some dating as far back as 2010. Yes, you heard that right, 2010. Apparently, in 2010, USAID did little to deliver on their promise of helping rebuild the nation following the devastating 2010 earthquake. But it's not even only USAID. USAID, as well as other non-governmental organizations, delivered on very few of their promises, failed to coordinate relief activities, and even skimmed money off the top. The continuing disaster status in Haiti and so many similar places is in part a product of these agencies' handiwork. What happened in Haiti captures, at the very least, the incompetence, if not the outright corruption, of these international relief organizations.
With gangs controlling 80% of the capital, Haiti remains in crisis.
There is probably no more corrupt government agency than USAID.
With the government overwhelmed and police intervention too late, gangs now hold the city in a stranglehold.
Since the 2010 earthquake in Haiti killed as many as 300,000 people, the U.S. government dispersed around $4.4 billion in foreign assistance to the small island nation. But here is where it gets really disturbing. At least $1.5 billion was meant for immediate humanitarian relief, while another $3 billion was meant for recovery, reconstruction, and development. Out of the $2.13 billion in contracts and grants for Haiti-related work, less than $50 million, or 2%, went to Haitian organizations or firms. Meanwhile, $1.3 billion was funneled to firms located in and around the U.S. Capitol. That's right. While the Haitians were left struggling, a massive chunk of their aid money was being wired to U.S.-based contractors. And people wonder why USAID is so threatened by the sudden scrutiny. To this day, it remains unclear how exactly the billions have been spent and whether U.S. tax dollars have had a lasting impact. USAID and its vendors have generally failed to make such data public, failing to provide substantial breakdowns of how the money was spent. This in turn has made it hard for government officials to track where the money actually went. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. This lack of clarity led to an inefficient and deceptive distribution of donations. And with so little financial data available, it's nearly impossible to analyze how effective the use and impact of these relief funds were on reconstruction and recovery. In 2010, a nonprofit disaster accountability project attempted to conduct a report on the transparency of NGOs in Haiti a year after the earthquake. And they reviewed about 196 organizations, out of which only 8 of these 196 readily had available any information about their activities in Haiti. In the end, only 1% of the organizations responded to the survey request. Even worse, while the responding organizations reported receiving more than $1.4 billion in donations, they only spent about $730 million on actual Haiti relief efforts. Now, all this begs the question, where did the other $670 million go? That's the million-dollar question that we might not be getting an answer to ever. But USAID is not alone in the lack of accountability. One of the largest nonprofit organizations involved in the Haitian emergency response, the Red Cross, raised an impressive $500 million for Haiti following the earthquake, but their actual impact was non-existent. The Red Cross claimed they provided housing to over 130,000 people, but investigations revealed that the organization only built 6 verifiable homes. The Red Cross refused to release a list of the specific activities they conducted in Haiti. Instead, they provided a vague breakdown of the funds into large and nondescript sectors on their website. They promised new homes, health centers, and sanitation systems in the Campeche neighborhood. But none of these ever materialized till this current day. Now, all of these make one wonder, where does all of this money go? Who pockets it? The reality of the situation is bleak. While organizations like USAID and the Red Cross raked in billions under the guise of humanitarian relief, the Haitian people were left to fend for themselves. Reports indicate that many Haitians had to rely on local grassroots efforts and self-organized community projects because foreign aid simply wasn't reaching them. And the corruption doesn't stop there.
They're dismantling USAID. They shut down the doors. They brought down banners.
USAID's track record is littered with scandals, mismanagement, and deceit. Over the years, it has come under fire for funding ineffective or corrupt governments, failing to provide oversight on how aid money is spent, and facing numerous allegations of financial mismanagement and conflicts of interest. These issues have plagued the agency for decades, and with the FBI's latest investigation uncovering even more incriminating evidence, the walls are closing in. This time, it won't just be a slap on the wrist. Some of the biggest names at USAID could finally face real legal consequences. And one thing is certain, this scandal is far from over. But USAID's failure isn't just about corruption at the top. It's also about the deeply flawed structure of humanitarian aid itself. Researchers Vijaya Ramachandran and Julie Walls from the Center for Global Development have described how USAID and its NGO partners, such as the Red Cross, operate under a system where donations pass through multiple layers of subcontractors and subgrantees before reaching the people who actually need help. With every step, middlemen take a cut, siphoning off funds through administrative fees, oversight charges, and vaguely defined program costs. By the time the money finally reaches the ground, only a fraction remains to make a real impact. This cycle ensures that relief efforts ultimately fail despite billions being poured into them. Money disappears long before it can do any good because charities often outsource their responsibilities to other organizations, who then pass it on to yet another set of groups, each deducting their share along the way. When the Red Cross raised $500 million for Haiti, a significant portion was reserved for their own internal costs. The organizations they hired to do the actual work took their own administrative cuts. And then the Red Cross charged yet another oversight fee just for managing these third-party projects. In the end, very little was left for the people who needed it most. The lack of transparency surrounding these operations makes it nearly impossible to track where the money actually goes, allowing ineffective and misleading practices to continue unchecked. Since these organizations are not required to release financial breakdowns, there is no way to properly analyze their effectiveness or long-term impact. The result is a system where billions are spent, yet struggling communities see little to no improvement in their conditions. And this problem extends far beyond Haiti. In 2023 alone, the U.S. provided $72 billion in foreign aid to 180 countries, with USAID leading the charge. The fact that so little scrutiny has been placed on how these massive sums are managed is staggering. Haiti is the perfect case study of USAID's failures. After the 2010 earthquake, billions of dollars in aid poured in, yet more than a decade later, much of the country remains in ruins. USAID and its NGO partners operate like unaccountable entities, spending enormous amounts of money while the people they claim to help continue to suffer. The same pattern of mismanagement and corruption has appeared elsewhere. In 2014, an Afghan national employed by a USAID contractor was arrested for embezzling over $500,000 from an agricultural development fund. This money was supposed to help struggling farmers, boost food production, and stabilize local economies. Instead, it vanished into thin air, exposing yet another glaring weakness in USAID's ability to track and protect the funds under its control. And the cracks in its system aren't new. A glaring example unfolded in Afghanistan, where a USAID-backed agricultural project became the center of a major fraud case. In a joint operation between Afghan police, American agents, and the USAID Office of Inspector General, authorities arrested Abdul Khalil Qaderi, a former employee of Development Alternatives Incorporated, an international company based in Bethesda, Maryland. Qaderi was accused of embezzling over $500,000 from the USAID-supported Agricultural Development Fund, orchestrating a scheme that involved wiring the funds into a bank account created under a fictitious name. Despite the serious nature of the crime, the legal consequences barely scratched the surface. Qaderi faced a maximum sentence of just 3 years in an Afghan prison, a mere slap on the wrist for someone who siphoned off critical development funds meant to uplift struggling farmers. While his actions also violated U.S. law, there was little indication that he would face significant prosecution stateside. USAID attempted to downplay the situation, emphasizing that the stolen money was insured and that U.S. taxpayers suffered no financial loss. But that's hardly the point. The scandal underscored a much larger issue, an ongoing pattern of mismanagement and lack of oversight that makes USAID an easy target for fraudsters. If a single employee could divert over $500,000 undetected until long after the fact, what does that say about the agency's internal controls? The Afghanistan case was just one of many, but it served as yet another warning sign that USAID's operations are riddled with inefficiencies and vulnerabilities. And now, with the FBI's latest probe bringing fresh evidence to light,
yeah, there are things that USAID, that we do through USAID, that we should continue to do, and we will continue to do.
the agency may finally be forced to confront the systemic corruption it has allowed to fester for years. But will this be the moment accountability finally arrives?
And actual funding recipients that have riled Musk include mainstream media outlets like Politico, as well as the BBC's international charity.
Or will it be just another scandal swept under the rug? Another headline quickly forgotten? One thing is certain, this story is far from over. And if there's one thing we know about high-profile corruption, it's that the loudest critics are often the ones who see through the lies before the rest of the world catches on. And this is where Elon Musk and Donald Trump come in. These two figures who, despite their stark differences, seem to share a common belief. USAID isn't what it claims to be, and they might be right. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and USAID. Now, following the history of USAID's bad rapport, there are some persons who wonder if USAID is really a charitable company like it claims, or whether it's just a front to embezzle money. And one of the people who strongly believe this organization is just a front is none other than Elon and his unlikely partner, Donald Trump. It all started February 11th, when Musk, who has publicly taken on the role of leading Doge, appeared in the Oval Office with the president to provide updates to the press on the department's progress. It all started on February 11th, when Musk, who has taken a surprisingly active role in government oversight, stood beside Trump in the Oval Office, ready to expose what he believed to be rampant corruption at USAID. As cameras rolled, Trump turned to Musk and asked him to share what his team had uncovered. Musk didn't hold back. "We do find it rather odd," he said, "that there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have..."
And we have, for example, turned on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention.
Ostensibly, a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow managed to accrue tens of millions of dollars of net worth while they are in that position, which is, you know, exactly what happened at USAID. The reality is that they're getting wealthy at the taxpayer's expense. It didn't take long for people to figure out who he was talking about: former USAID Administrator Samantha Power. A rumor circulating online claimed that Power's net worth had skyrocketed from around $7 million when Biden appointed her in 2021 to a staggering $30 million by the time she left the agency in 2025. Musk himself reposted the claim on X the day before the press conference, adding, "Sounds very fishy." But here's where things get messy. Despite how compelling the accusation seemed, no one pushing it, including Musk, produced any real evidence to back it up. The claim traced back to a website called Inside Biden's Basement, which had been publishing financial disclosures of Biden administration officials since 2022. The problem? Federal financial disclosure forms don't actually calculate net worth. They're meant to flag potential conflicts of interest, not track a person's wealth over time. Power's own disclosures, which are public record, showed that her reported wealth, shared with her husband, prominent author and scholar, Cass Sunstein, remained in roughly the same range throughout her tenure at USAID. In 2021, she reported a net worth between $8.8 million and $29 million. By 2024, that range had shifted slightly to $12 million to $30.5 million. But social media posts had conveniently taken the lowest estimate from 2021 and compared it to the highest from 2024, creating the illusion of a massive financial jump. In reality, Power, who has long been a best-selling author and high-profile public figure, came into government already wealthy, just like many officials before her. As Forbes pointed out in a recent report, Washington is full of millionaires who didn't make their fortunes in office. But the truth didn't seem to matter much in the court of public opinion. Once Musk and Trump turned the spotlight on USAID, the damage was done. The agency was already drowning in controversy, and whether or not Power's wealth had actually ballooned, the real question remained. If USAID's leadership wasn't personally profiting from taxpayer money, then who was? Now, the U.S. Agency for International Development finds itself at the center of a political firestorm. The Trump administration is moving to shut it down as an independent agency, possibly folding it into the State Department as part of a broader crackdown on federal bureaucracy. For decades, USAID has funneled billions into humanitarian aid overseas, funding that supporters claim is a lifeline for more than 100 countries. But Trump isn't buying it. Over the weekend, Trump slammed USAID as run by a bunch of radical lunatics. Elon Musk, who now heads his administration's government efficiency initiative, took it further, calling USAID a criminal organization. Now the agency's future is hanging by a thread. NBC News reports that Trump officials are discussing
the future of the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, is uncertain.
Folding USAID under the State Department.
USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision.
Citing over a dozen sources. But Musk doesn't want it restructured. He wants it gone. On Monday, he announced that the administration was actively working to shutter the agency, just a week after hundreds of USAID contractors were placed on unpaid leave. Many were outright terminated following Trump's worldwide freeze on U.S. foreign aid. Then, in a dramatic twist, USAID's Washington office was abruptly closed, with employees ordered to work remotely. The chaos deepened when the agency's director of security and his deputy were placed on administrative leave, reportedly after denying Musk's cost-cutting task force access to USAID's secure systems over the weekend. And it's not just Musk calling USAID out. Ron Paul, former politician, activist, and American author, weighed in on the situation, calling the potential shutdown one of Trump's most significant and necessary moves.
Congress to do away with USAID, or do you believe you have...
I don't know. I don't think so. No, not when it comes to fraud.
Paul pointed out that most Americans still associate USAID with those bags of rice and grain stamped with the U.S. flag, a symbol of goodwill in disaster-stricken areas. But sadly, that's a smokescreen. USAID is a key component of the U.S. government's regime change operations worldwide, Paul warns. It spends billions each year propping up so-called NGOs that function as shadow governments, eating away at elected leaders the U.S. wants to overthrow. From Ukraine to Georgia to countless other hotspots, USAID's fingerprints are all over U.S. meddling in foreign affairs. Meddling that, if it were happening inside America, would spark outrage. And if you need proof of just how deeply USAID is embedded, look no further than Ukraine. When Trump ordered a 90-day pause in USAID activities, the fallout was swift and revealing. Ukrainian media outlets, which had long pushed a pro-US narrative, suddenly found themselves in crisis. The reason? A stunning 90% of Ukraine's media is funded by USAID. That means most so-called independent news outlets in Ukraine aren't independent at all. They're financed by the U.S. government. So how much of what Americans hear about the war is actually just U.S. propaganda, funneled through media outlets that exist solely to push Washington's foreign policy agenda? The answer is chilling. USAID funds foreign media. Those outlets publish U.S.-friendly stories. The American mainstream media picks them up, reporting them as fact. That false narrative is then fed back into Washington, influencing policymakers. It's a closed-loop propaganda machine, one that not only deceives the public, but also misleads the very government making key foreign policy decisions. No wonder Congress keeps rubber stamping this endless war. And the corruption doesn't stop there. Musk recently drew attention to a bombshell New York Post report. USAID funneled $53 million to EcoHealth Alliance, the group that backed gain-of-function research on coronaviruses at the Wuhan lab. Think about that. The same agency claiming to promote democracy and humanitarian aid was quietly funding research that may have played a role in the outbreak of COVID-19. Did USAID help bankroll the origins of the virus that upended the world? Americans deserve answers. Ron Paul is clear. USAID must go. In times of crisis, the American people have always shown their generosity. Private volunteer organizations can provide critical aid without the political strings and covert operations that come with USAID funding. It's time for transparency. USAID needs a full independent audit. Americans deserve to know exactly where their taxpayer dollars are going and what's really being done in their name overseas. And when the truth comes out, shut it down. Send every last employee home. Because if Trump, Musk, and Ron Paul are right, eliminating USAID isn't just a step toward government efficiency, it's a necessary move to end one of America's most corrupt, covert foreign influence machines. But to truly understand the scale of USAID's power and how it became a tool for political manipulation, we need to go back to the beginning. History of USAID. The United States Agency for International Development, USAID, was founded in 1961 with a noble mission: to administer civilian foreign aid and development assistance. Established by President John F. Kennedy, it was meant to unite various aid programs under one agency, ensuring a streamlined approach to global development. But while USAID presents itself as a force for humanitarian relief and economic progress, its role in international affairs has often sparked controversy. From disaster relief and global health initiatives to economic development and democratic governance, USAID has operated across more than 100 countries, focusing on regions in Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. With average annual disbursements of around $23 billion since 2001, it has consistently been one of the world's largest aid agencies. However, its work has often extended beyond traditional development efforts, becoming deeply intertwined with U.S. foreign policy and, at times, accused of advancing political agendas rather than humanitarian ones. The origins of USAID date back to November 1961, when the U.S. government sought to consolidate its various foreign aid programs. Before USAID's official establishment, its predecessor agencies already had a significant presence in developing countries, with over 6,400 staff members deployed in field missions. After taking office in January 1961, President Kennedy wasted no time reshaping America's foreign aid strategy. He first established the Peace Corps in March, setting the stage for a broader global development push. Shortly after, he delivered a special address to Congress, calling for the 1960s to be a decade of development and proposing a unified aid agency. By November, Kennedy signed the Foreign Assistance Act, officially creating the Agency for International Development, AID, later rebranded as USAID. Unlike its predecessors, USAID was granted administrative autonomy while still operating under the policy direction of the State Department. The idea was simple. Rather than spreading aid programs across multiple agencies, USAID would serve as America's centralized force for global development, implementing projects directly through in-country field missions. This structure has remained largely intact, even as the agency's influence and objectives have evolved over the decades. Though USAID was initially founded to promote international development, its role has often extended far beyond humanitarian efforts. Over the years, critics have accused it of serving as a tool for U.S. foreign influence, funding NGOs that push political agendas, supporting opposition groups in foreign governments, and even engaging in covert operations. In January 2025, the Trump administration ordered a near-total freeze on foreign aid, citing allegations of wasteful spending and fraud. Elon Musk, acting as a special government employee under the newly established Department of Government Efficiency, publicly declared USAID to be a criminal organization and called for its complete shutdown. The administration's plan to reduce USAID staff from 10,000 employees to just 290 sparked legal challenges, leading a federal court to issue a temporary restraining order on the staff reductions. The United States Agency for International Development is an independent agency of the United States government responsible for administering civilian foreign aid and development assistance. USAID was established in 1961 by President John F. Kennedy to unite several foreign assistance organizations and programs under one agency. Statute law places USAID under the direct authority and policy guidance of the Secretary of State. It implements programs in global health, disaster relief, socio-economic development, environmental protection, democratic governance, and education. USAID has primarily supported developing countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America by funding projects run by local groups, international organizations on the ground, and other governments. With average annual disbursements of about $23 billion since 2001, USAID has been one of the world's largest aid agencies and accounts for most U.S. foreign assistance, the highest in the world in absolute dollar terms. USAID has missions in over 100 countries, primarily in Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. USAID has faced scrutiny over its role in political operations of influence abroad and potential conflicts of interest. In January 2025, the Trump administration ordered a near-total freeze on foreign aid.
When you look at USAID, that's a fraud. The whole thing is a fraud.
Making false and misleading allegations of wasteful spending and fraud and planning to reduce employee numbers from around 10,000 to 290. Elon Musk, who has been carrying out Trump's cost-cutting agenda as a special government employee through the Department of Government Efficiency, announced the intention of shutting down USAID. The legality of Trump's order was contested, and a federal court issued a temporary restraining order pausing staff reductions. When the U.S. government created USAID in November 1961, it built on a legacy of previous development assistance agencies and their people, budgets, and operating procedures. USAID's predecessor agency was already substantial, with 6,400 U.S. staff in developing country field missions in 1961. Except for the peak years of the Vietnam War, 1965 to 70, that was more U.S. field staff than USAID would have in the future, and triple the number USAID has had in field missions in the years since 2000. After his inauguration as president on January 20th, 1961, John F. Kennedy created the Peace Corps by executive order on March 1st, 1961. On March 22nd, he sent a special message to Congress on foreign aid, asserting that the 1960s should be a decade of development and proposing to unify U.S. Development Assistance Administration into a single agency. He sent a proposed Act for International Development to Congress in May, and the resulting Foreign Assistance Act was approved in September, repealing the Mutual Security Act. In November, Kennedy signed the act and issued an executive order tasking the Secretary of State to create, within the State Department, the Agency for International Development as the successor to both ICA and the Development Loan Fund. With these actions, the U.S. created a permanent agency working with administrative autonomy under the policy guidance of the State Department to implement, through resident field missions, a global program of both technical and financial development assistance for low-income countries. This structure has continued to date. In the 2023 fiscal year, the United States funneled a staggering $72 billion in foreign aid across various agencies, funding everything from women's health programs and food distribution in war zones to clean water initiatives, HIV/AIDS treatments, energy security, and anti-corruption efforts. Roughly half of that amount, less than 1% of the total U.S. federal budget, belonged to USAID, an agency that employed over 10,000 staffers and contractors, with 2/3 stationed overseas. As the largest single donor to the United Nations, the U.S. provided 42% of all aid tracked by the organization in 2024. But in early 2025, the tide turned drastically. What began as murmurs of reform under Trump's second administration quickly escalated into a full-scale war against USAID, culminating in a near-total freeze of foreign aid, mass firings, and a legal battle over the agency's very existence. On January 24, 2025, President Donald Trump ordered a near-total freeze on all foreign aid. Several days later, Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a waiver for humanitarian aid. Despite the waiver, there was still much confusion about what agencies should do. More than 1,000 USAID employees and contractors were fired or furloughed following the near-total freeze on U.S. global assistance that the second Trump administration implemented. Matt Hobson, the USAID Chief of Staff appointed by the Trump administration, resigned. On January 27, 2025, the agency's official government website was shut down. On February 3, 2025, Elon Musk, who has been carrying out parts of Trump's cost-cutting agenda, announced that he and Trump were in the process of shutting down USAID, claiming it to be a criminal organization and that it was beyond repair. Also on February 3rd, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced that he had been appointed acting administrator of USAID by Trump and that the agency was being merged into the State Department. The legality of these actions is disputed given the mandate for their creation in the Foreign Assistance Act. It was announced that on February 6, 2025, at 11:59 p.m., all USAID direct hire personnel would be placed on administrative leave globally, with the exception of designated personnel responsible for mission-critical functions, core leadership, and specially designated programs. By the evening of February 6th, reports had emerged indicating that the total number of employees to be retained was 294 out of a total of more than 10,000. Trump declared that agency leaders were radical left lunatics, while the State Department ordered them to halt virtually all their projects, even if that meant ceasing programs that helped to eradicate smallpox and prevented millions of HIV cases. The freeze in HIV relief programs, including PEPFAR, is estimated to jeopardize treatment access for 20 million people, including 500,000 children. This drastic action led to sudden pauses in over 30 clinical trials for ailments such as HIV, malaria, cholera, cervical cancer, and tuberculosis, leaving participants with medical devices in their bodies and cut off from researchers, likely going against the principles of the Declaration of Helsinki. It also led to a pause in other efforts such as wartime help in Ukraine, hospital assistance in Syria, education programs in Mali, and conservation efforts in the Amazon. In a statement explaining the threat to billions of dollars the agency spends on American businesses, the American Farm Bureau Federation said, "Aid plays a critical role in reducing hunger around the world while sourcing markets for the surplus foods America's farmers and ranchers grow." The action of the Trump administration also caused frustration among conservatives like Andrew Natsios, the former USAID administrator under the George W. Bush administration, told PBS that, in his view, none of the people involved in dismantling USAID had any knowledge of the agency. He specifically questioned Elon Musk's understanding of international development, stating that Musk knew absolutely nothing about it. Natsios criticized the individuals working under Musk, describing them as young tech professionals in their 20s who lacked any knowledge of international development, the Global South, or USAID's programs and policies. He emphasized that USAID was the most pro-business and pro-market aid agency in the world and asserted that he could say this with certainty. He also made it clear that he was a conservative Republican, not a liberal, and had served in multiple Republican administrations. A lawsuit was then filed on February 6th by the American Foreign Service Association and the American Federation of Government Employees in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia on February 6th, requesting a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction against the administration, claiming that it violated separation of powers, the Take Care Clause of the Constitution, and the Administrative Procedure Act, and requesting that all attempts to shut down the agency be halted, all recent actions be reversed, and a new acting director be appointed. The following day, U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols, nominated by President Trump in 2019, stated from the bench that he would enter a temporary restraining order, pausing the plan to put thousands of employees on leave and pausing the accelerated removal of workers from their posts abroad. On February 21st, Judge Nichols cleared the way for the Trump administration to move forward with pulling thousands of USAID staffers off the job in the United States and around the world, as part of an administration plan to also provide those abroad with a 30-day deadline to move back to the U.S. at government expense. As the battle over USAID rages on, one thing is clear. The agency's dismantling marks one of the most dramatic shifts in American foreign policy in modern history. What began as a government cost-cutting measure has spiraled into a humanitarian crisis, a legal showdown, and a fundamental debate over America's role on the world stage. Do you think USAID is corrupt, or do you think otherwise? Let us know in the comments. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it,